guided organization that works on advocating and ensuring that family and youth voice is injected into all the work that's being done by the state and by agencies, and also at the local level, the county level. Our motto is nothing about us without us. And in that vein, we hold these town halls annually to allow for the chairs of the different committees in the Senate and the Assembly and the commissioners or deputy commissioners of different state agencies to talk about particular issues that our families and young people are saying are important to them, and to talk about the policies that we're being impacted by, and give you the opportunity to hear from those of us who are the nothing about us without us. So I'd like to say thank you to our chairs of the Children and Families Committee in the Assembly and the Senate, Assemblyman Andy Hevesi and Senator Geohagen-Pratt, and also our Deputy Commissioner from the Office of Children and Family Services, Gail Geohagen-Pratt. The three of them are our guests today, the panelists who are going to be answering questions from the family and youth members who we call ambassadors. So I'd like to give each of them an opportunity to just say hello and introduce themselves. I'll start with Assemblyman Hevesi.
Sure. So hi, Paige. Thank you to Paige, and thank you to Brad, and to all of my friends at Families Together, and thank you to all of our ambassadors, because I've done a couple of these over the last couple of years, and every time we have one of these meetings, I learned something new about what we should be doing in Albany when it relates to the child welfare system. I do want to say thank you. We've had some success in the past working together on issues like the child welfare housing subsidy, which has been a passion project for all of us. I think it relates to your first question that the ambassadors are going to ask. We've been working on that a couple of years. I'm also looking forward to get some more traction on a policy called the Children and Family Wellbeing Fund, which is a way to drive money into communities so they don't have to go through systems like CPS or ACS, which has monitoring and surveillance. And then also the last thing, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation about this. Senator Brisport and I were privileged to pass a bill called Anonymous Reporting of the Child Welfare System. And that is on the governor's desk. And I think it's an important topic where everybody involved, whether you're for it or against it, is trying to do right by children and families. But it's a ripe time for that discussion. So I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you again to Paige and Brad and all of our friends. And I look forward to this robust discussion with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Senator Brisport.
Thank you so much, Paige, and to everyone at Families Together, and to all those participating in this panel, and also those watching and those who submitted questions. Again, State Senator Geohagen-Pratt, the Senate counterpart to Assemblymember Hevesi. I chair the Committee on Children and Families, which deals with a wide range of policies in the family and child space, including things such as the family policing system and also the youth justice system. And I know two of the horizons and the sort of guiding stars for our work in this committee is to ensure that families and children have the resources they need, such that not one more child goes into the criminal justice system, or not one child has to go into the foster care system or family policing system. Honored to serve alongside Assemblymember Hevesi for many of the victories and fights that we've had this year for the Child and Family Wellbeing Fund, for the ending of anonymous reporting, and so many others. And looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Paige. Good afternoon, everyone. Gail Geohagen-Pratt, Deputy Commissioner for the Division of Child Welfare and Community Services here at the Office of Children and Family Services, or OCFS, as we are usually known by. I appreciate, as always, the opportunity to be able to be invited into this space. I always welcome the opportunity to engage in conversation, discussion in regards to the child welfare system. Appreciate opportunities to be able to share about the work that we're doing to continue to support and improve outcomes for children and families, recognizing that there are still areas of opportunities and areas to work on. And in this space, being able to hear from those who have had involvement with the system from a lived person's experience to be able to inform and guide those. So look forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, panelists. And it's my pleasure to now introduce Hope Newton, who is our Family Public Policy Coordinator. Hope is going to be our moderator today. So Hope, can you introduce yourself and then take it from there?
Certainly, Paige. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew Hevesi, Jabari Bisport, Gail Geohagen-Pratt, and all of the folks, our ambassadors, for coming to this virtual town hall so that you could ask the questions. Hope Lizette Newton. I am an impacted parent. I have worked in this system, within and outside of the system for over a decade, at least 15 years, as a parent advocate, as a program officer with a foundation that contributes money to strengthening families, and now in this capacity, leveraging all of my skills to do this work, supporting the initiatives of Families Together in New York State. Each one of you have seen me in different platforms, and you're seeing me here and now as I introduce our ambassadors for today. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves and then ask their questions. I'm going to start with our first ambassador is Ashley Polano from Westchester.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on this platform. My name is Ashley Polano. My organization is the Westchester Justice for Families. We are a grassroots organization based out of Yonkers, New York. We currently hold our programs in Yonkers and White Plains, and we are hoping to spread out throughout Westchester County for the year 2026. Some of our programs, well, our only program includes informing parents of their parental rights when dealing with child welfare systems. We have teamed up with Legal Services of Hudson Valley. We have held community seminars informing parents of their rights. I myself am an impacted parent. I have spent 10 years in and out of the family court system, DV survivor. So I have had a long experience with child welfare and family court. And so a couple of parents have just come up with this idea to have an organization to inform each other of our rights and share knowledge that we wouldn't get on a normal basis. And so that's why we are in existence. And so I'll just jump into asking my question. My question is, when a child has been removed due to false or malicious reporting, overreach, or no findings, what are steps that are taken to repair the trauma and the harm from the experience?
And who wants to take a crack at that one?
I'm happy to start, and whomever else would like to add to the discussion. So I do, because Assemblymember Hevesi made mention of the anonymous caller bill that is on Governor Hochul's desk. I do just want to take a moment to sort of parse out your question, Ashley, in terms of there is the circumstance of false and malicious reporting, and then there is the circumstances that is guided in terms of statutes and regulations as it pertains to a removal from a child from their home. And so, just trying to appreciate in terms of that standard that is guided both by statute and regulations in terms of what are the circumstances that rises to that threshold that a child would be removed from their home, and that it's actions that is not just based on the investigation by the child welfare worker, but also involves the courts and a review of the information and a decision by the courts as to whether or not the decision by the local district to remove that child, were there diligence of efforts, and is there enough information that would demonstrate that there was an immediate safety for that child to be removed from their home. And this is not to, I just want to appreciate that there is facts that have to be met when it comes to the removal, and for a judge to also make a determination as to that action. And then also certainly want to also address the aspect of the anonymous caller bill and the malicious reporting, which I'm going to leave that to Assemblymember Hevesi, because I think he really wanted to be able to speak up on that. That said, I think more holistically in terms of what is the intention of child welfare and what is the footprint that we are supposed to, the purpose of child welfare. And child welfare is really about, for me, when I think about the role and responsibility of child welfare, it is about circumstances in where children are, there is legitimate concerns about abuse and neglect. And I know that there are varying lens and approaches in regards to the child welfare system, whether or not there should be a child welfare system that exists. I think of it through the lens of, I know that based on what continues to come to my attention, that unfortunately there are still instances where children are being abused and neglected. And so there is a space to have a response to that. And separately, there are circumstances in which families need support that don't need to come to the attention of child welfare. And so I think that's the space that we are in here at OCFS, is really trying to make that distinction of where is there the circumstances rise to the level that it warrants child welfare involvement versus where this is about a family that needs support. And then how do we continue to create pathways so that there is that approach to be able to support families. And so we've done the updated mandated reporter training with the hashtag, you don't have to report a family to support a family, because we really want to underscore that not every circumstance needs child welfare involvement. We've also established the HERES line, which stands for Help, Empower, Advocate, Reassure, and Support, which is a helpline that is directly accessible to family as well as providers, where again, emphasizing where this is not about abuse or neglect, but this is about supporting families, that we're providing another pathway in regards to supporting families. I'm going to pause there because I want to make sure that my response is addressing your question. And also, I certainly want to make sure that the fellow panelists have a chance to weigh in as well.
Can I jump in on that, if that's okay, Paige? Yes. Okay. So first, thank you for the answer. That answer. I just want to say that OCFS has done a great job in a variety of their programs about not only preventing family breakup, but also helping families post. I will tell you for Ashley, hope it's okay, I call you Ashley, that I think it's great that you brought that group together about informing parents of their rights. I do think that's a necessity. I will tell you that's another bill that one of my colleagues carries. I think Senator Brisport carries this bill as well in the Senate. So he could talk about giving parents information before they let CPS in the door, which I think is an important a component here. But then there's one other piece I just want to flag for you, talking about families in the system. And this is another bill that's on the governor's desk. It's a smaller bill, but I think you'll appreciate the intent. It's trying to get a handle on hidden foster care, which is the practice when, as you know, CPS goes out and they tell a family member, you got to take this kid, otherwise the kid is, going to be turned over to foster care. And that system of hidden foster care, where we're taking children from their families and giving them to a grandmother or other member of the family, while not giving that family member resources, no access to educational assistance for the kid or medical ability to make medical decisions. I think we really need to get a handle on how often we're doing that, which is why we have a bill, hopefully to be signed by Governor Hochul, that asks the state to track how many of these hidden foster care placements are we doing a year, because basically that's just separating families. And until we get a handle on how frequently we're doing this, I don't think I'll be able to answer your question about how we're able to get families back together who've gone through the system and don't deserve it. But I think that's an important component. So thank you for letting me share.
That's great, and I'll round out just talking more about the Family Miranda bill. It's similar, and I think most people here are aware of it, and people that are watching are aware of it too. But actually, would essentially codify in state law the work that you were doing in terms of informing parents of their rights. We have a very broken system in which all parents theoretically have rights of how they can engage when a CPS or ACS worker shows up at their door, but only some parents are aware of them, and only some parents can exercise those rights. So what that bill would do would have the caseworker share the rights with the parent at the first point of contact, both verbally and in writing. This is something that has been practiced, been put into effect in multiple states at this point, including Texas and California. And it is something that I know the Assemblymember moved through his committee in this Assembly. We are still trying to move it through our committee in the Senate and eventually get it to the floor. But I see that as a preventative measure to allow parents to exercise their rights, especially in cases where they are maybe the victim of an unnecessary or a false complaint.
Mhm. Thank you, both. I certainly do want to say that OCFS is in alignment that parents should know their rights. And we know that ACS New York City has already implemented a initiative in which they are providing information to families when they go out to the home in regards to the rights, parental rights as it pertains to CPS investigations. OCFS is also having conversations, discussions in regards to what this can look like on a more statewide basis. So I just want to lift up that we are also in alignment in regards to parents knowing their rights. I also appreciate what you've lifted up, Assembly Member, in terms of the topic of hidden foster care. I think that really speaks to when a worker goes out to a home and there are circumstances in which there may be concerns that warrants an intervention. And then it's sort of that assessment as to the family having the ability to make a plan, which is what should be occurring, is that, you know, as we talk about parental rights, is the ability to make a plan. And that plan may be that, you know, I'm making the plan that this my child or children can go and stay with an aunt or whomever while the immediate concern is addressed. What I do appreciate in terms of what you're raising is that happening in the context that it should? And then what is the accountability of following up and services that may need to be provided? Is there specific, points that are accounted for in terms of timeframes, in terms of, certainly at the closing of an investigation, there should not be sort of this pending safety plan that does not have resolution. So I think that it's there is a space where we want to honor the ability of parents to make a plan, but we also want to make sure that it's happening in a way that is responsible and that there's accountability built in.
Thank you so much for the answers to that question regarding just making sure that you're looking at the distinction between family support, pathways to support, and child welfare involvement. Also looking at these other bills that are coming up that have been pushed by families and their involvement by parent engagement movement, and that there's some conversation going on moving from a more adversarial relationship to listening to what parents are saying to being more collaborative. So that's a positive thing. I'd like to move on to the next person. and that would be Amal. Amal, could you just let us know about your impact and the question? Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Amal Karufi. I'm here from the Are You Listening and Congregate Placements Protect Youth campaign. I come into this space with my own lived experience in both the child welfare system as well as congregate care. So my question today is about congregate placements for both children and young people in foster care. So my question is, what does it say about our state's priorities when New York continues to spend nearly $500,000 per child each year on congregate care? And how can we explain not redirecting those funds towards family and community-based solutions that actually work? Given that, youth often exit congregate placement for greater challenges like homelessness, mental health struggles, and economic instability, how can the state continue to rely on these institutions instead of building a system that truly supports long-term success?
I can jump in on that one if everybody's comfortable. So Amal, thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. I will tell you that congregate care is not where you want our kids to be idealistically. If you were creating a system, you'd try to reduce the number of kids in congregate care as much as possible. But there are certain kids that are going to need to be in that sort of setting. I do want to clarify or qualify that. But I will tell you that over the last couple of years, the senator and I and other colleagues, we've been working on the child welfare housing subsidy issue, and in partnership with Brad and Paige and other friends on this call, and that is specifically designed to give kids to get a housing subsidy to get out of congregate care. And I'll give you just a little bit of background on it. When I'd say it was about 10 years ago, we moved during the Cuomo administration to allow those kids who receive a subsidy of about $300, $325 a month to live with roommates because the former governor wouldn't let us increase the subsidy. But then we came back at it, and last year increased that, or 2 years ago, I'm not quite sure, we increased that subsidy to $725. So with the recognition that we're going to use that subsidy to help prevent families from going into the system, but also to make sure if those kids are in congregate care that they have an opportunity to get out. So I agree with you that congregate care is not ideally where we want to be placing our kids. And I just wanted to let you know that the child welfare housing subsidy, that's one of the ways we've been working on to get kids out of congregate care over the last couple of years. And I think we've had some success there.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And I would just like to also add to what you've already stated. Amal, OCFS also does not believe that congregate care is the default for what those circumstances when a child does need to be removed from the home because of safety concerns. Actually, we in 2019, we actually put out guidance policy that really was about when circumstances, and I really want to underscore when circumstances are such that a child cannot remain in the home, that the first way in which counties are looking at resources is kinship. Because if the circumstances are such that a child is not able to remain in their home, then we really do want districts to look at kinship as the first pathway to supporting that child and that family. And we were very broad in terms of when we talk about kinship, that it's not just about by blood, but it's also what we call fictive kin. So individuals that have a meaningful role with that child and that family. Additionally, we set some targets that we wanted to have at minimum 50% of all children that are coming into foster care, that they are placed with kinship, and that we have no more than 12% of all foster care, of all children that come into foster care that are in a congregate care setting. And we continue to work towards that goal because, again, we absolutely know what the research and the data shows just comprehensively about foster care. But then as children are in a congregate care setting, we know that the outcomes do not look good, especially after a certain length of stay in a congregate care setting. And so this is what I will say, not only that OCFS is having conversations, but these are some of the very same conversations that we're having with our sister state agencies, including the Office of Mental Health, the Department of Health, the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, because collectively, when we think about congregate care in the residential system, those are also entities in which there is residential. And so collectively, how can we look at this space and how we are looking to build up community-based programs, services, and supports? Because if we are looking to shrink the door to children coming into care, and in particular into the deepest end of our system when it comes to congregate care, then what are we doing on the front end in terms of building up community-based programs and supports, especially programs and supports that speaks to mental health? We know that that's one of the drivers of families interfacing with our systems, substance use, and economic and concrete supports. You know, we've been stressing that poverty does not equate to neglect. And so what is it that we can do to be more proactive in supporting through economic and concrete supports? So again, we are narrowing the door to families even having to interface with the child welfare system. Does that, is that responsive to your question, Amal?
Amal? Thank you. The smile says it for me. It's interesting because that question overlaps with what Elizabeth wanted to address in terms of kinship care.
May I?
Brad, you look like you had something you wanted to
Yeah.
say, so I'm just going to step aside and let you do what you do.
I'd love to jump in for a second. And I, one, have to say thank you, Amal, for asking this question, and for, I think, pointing out for many of us what the crux of this is that there's a massive amount of resources being allocated by the state government, federal dollars being marshaled to, and for many of us looking at this is sort of like the status quo that, you know, no offense to Assemblymember, the idea that ideally, we wouldn't want to place children in these settings, children that are growing up in extreme poverty, who are growing up in adverse situations, families that are struggling to raise children in difficult conditions. And hundreds and hundreds of dollars are spent per day to put them in a place where they can be safe or where they can get their needs met. And I think what Amal and many others in the congregate care world and following things like Family First, questioning why it is that so much money, so many resources could be spent to take kids away from their homes and put them in these places where they're safe, rather than invest in those children's families, in the communities where they're growing up. And, you know, respectfully, the housing subsidy, these are good things, right? Certainly, a lot of things that Gail mentioned are positive steps forward. But, you know, I think this, what we're talking about and what Amal's raising is a little bit more transformative and radical and asking deeper questions. And I think we want to think about what we're actually going to do to usurp this, to this what feels like very an upside down way of looking at families and how the state allocates its resources. I question why it is we can't provide services in a child's home that are available in these congregate settings. And if those things are, if there are barriers, if there are challenges, let's take those things head on and really redesign the system. Amal, I don't know if anything I just said stands out to you, or am I putting words in your mouth? Just want to thumbs up, yes or no, you're with it, you're not. Okay. So I just wanted to say that.
No, Brad or Bradley, I have a tendency to shorten people's names, so.
You can call me Bradford, it's okay. I'm just kidding.
But I appreciate your putting a fine point on that. And I will say those are the very conversations that we're having. And it is a very fair assessment to make that there is a lot of investment on what is the higher end of our system in terms of out-of-home care, and absolutely agree that if the pendulum could go switch the other direction in terms of being more preventive in our approach, then I do think that some of the very conversations that we're having here in terms of how do we shrink the footprint of child welfare, how do we support families, would start to be addressed if there was that shifting. Obviously, you know, this is a conversation that goes beyond just us panelists here and others, including just how the federal government structures funding reimbursement. But I do think, you know, you mentioned Family First, and I think that was an attempt to move in that direction. But as it has sort of continued to roll out, we see the limitations because a lot of the evidence-based programs still has more of a tertiary access point as opposed to an upstream primary prevention access point. So I do want to just I wanted to be responsive to your comments specifically, because those are the very conversations that we're having, because I think it is a very fair question to ask is, if we are willing to put that level of investment in out-of-home care, why can't that be flipped on its head and we do that in a more proactive way? You know, I will say that, you know, just to acknowledge that there are investments in terms of the prevention front and primary prevention, but I do think there is opportunity for more to occur, and to look at those wraparound supports to be made more comprehensively available to support children staying in the home with families. So.
Can I follow up on that a little bit, Brad, if that's okay? And Ms. Pratt, that was really helpful. So thank you. Just one note of concern. So I agree with the fact that we're spending a lot of money on things that we shouldn't, and we are looking to turn that system around. But you got to do it slowly and piecemeal. And this is for Amal and Bradley. I totally agree or understand the idea of, hey, why don't you just take all the money out of congregate care and start using it for families in their houses and other things. That's something we could look at, but I would caution, if you look back at the history of, let's say, institutions in New York State, we did the exact same thing when we were going to promise the mental institutions that they were going to close. We told them, hey, you're going to have community services, going to be great. You'll be taken care of in your homes. It'll be taken care of in your communities. It'll be fantastic. And it was one of the world's biggest lies, and it never manifested. And that's why we have mentally ill people on the street and homelessness. So I understand the urge to reorient the system quickly. I'd be a little bit cautious about a push to do that wasn't genuine. That would be my concern.
Yeah, I'll receive that, and I appreciate that comment. I don't think advocates are in such a huge rush that we're going to completely defund the system overnight and recreate it into something different. I'd also say that I agree with you that the bait and switch in the mental health space of bringing down institutions and de-emphasizing and residential programming did not come with community services. And if you can believe it, in the children's mental health side, there's a lawsuit that the state is settling to address that very, very literal shortcoming when it came to the youth mental health system. And Department of Health and OMH have agreed to a settlement to address that when it comes to youth. And so all these things in mind, I respect that point. And we agree there has to be this inversion of things, so we focus on families first, literally, not just in namesake alone. I know I jumped in, and I appreciate your patience, so I'm going to pass it back to you.
You sure did, but it's a rich conversation. It's good to hear that there is agreement that congregate care is something that, you know, is not the best place for children and families, that there is some work that's being done. It's good to learn about the child welfare housing subsidy bill, and it's also good to learn about the work that has been, you know, the efforts that are being made, you know, across systems when it comes to this. Kinship is a big question that Elizabeth had. So Elizabeth, could you share about yourself and your impact and your question?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Elizabeth Signorelli. I am a licensed social worker who was adopted at 12 years old. And now I'm actually providing kinship care to my niece who is 5 years old and my nephew who is 5 months old. I feel like both of my personal experiences and my professional experiences give me a unique perspective on the challenges that families and children face every day. And I just wanted to tell you and appreciate the opportunity to connect with you guys. So my first question is, what can we do at the state level to ensure that children maintain a safe and meaningful, and I really stress meaningful, contact with their biological siblings post-adoption, especially when those connections are often the most stable relationships they have. And I ask that question, say meaningful, because I have four nieces and nephews, and two of them are in foster care. And one of them I have not seen in 9 months. And the last time I saw him was at McDonald's. And that is not meaningful. So that's why I say stress that. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in in regards to that. So, Elizabeth, first of all, I just want to acknowledge your being a kin caregiver to your niece and nephew. I think that's awesome, and I'm sure they appreciate that maintenance of the family connections. And I appreciate your really lifting up meaningful, because there is a distinction, and you're absolutely correct. And that is what we are continuing to work on in this space, in full transparency. So each state is reviewed, has an audit by the federal government in regards to specifically the Administration for Children and Families, in regards to how we are doing in terms of outcomes for children and families. And one of the areas is engagement. And in full transparency, this is an area that New York State has work to do. And when it comes to when children are placed out of the home, when they are in foster care, and how are meaningful relationships maintained. So yes, I can say that there are statutory and regulatory requirements that districts and agency are required to adhere to. And then there is the actual, and what does practice look like on the ground. So yes, we have policies that we administer that speaks to what the requirements are for on the local district levels. And we also have our regional offices. We have our permanency engagement specialists, and that is part of why we have them situated in our regional offices, is because we understand that while there is statutes, policies, regulations, there is also the actual looking at practice and how to engage in those conversations with direct field staff doing the work. How is it happening? And also, what are the challenges that sort of impact the ability to support meaningful connections? Is there something that we can do on a state level to address any of those barriers or concerns? Because at the end of the day, and I do appreciate that you mentioned the word safety, because certainly that's always something that we have to take a look at, is that there isn't a safety concern as to why there could not be connections. But if there is not a safety concern, then really what we are supposed to be doing is promoting those meaningful connections.
Do we have anyone else who's interested in jumping in on that question? Hevesi.
Yep, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got pulled off for a second. That was an excellent answer to the question. I just want to follow up, Elizabeth, and tell you that we in the legislature, we fund a program called KinGap every year to the tune of, I think it's $1.9 million. And then there's another initiative that we have started we're looking to fund, but we have not had success yet. It's a kinship legal program to provide money for the lawyers that you need to handle when a kid gets dropped off in a family circumstance like that. So there are small amounts of money that come out of the state budget that we're trying to increase to use to help kinship families. But I will be perfectly honest with you, I don't have a good answer personally. Maybe the other panelists do, but I don't have a good answer to the post-adoption question about how do you have meaningful contact with kin. I don't have a good answer, but at some point, if you would like to follow up with Brad and Paige and the rest of us and start looking at that, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. I'm sure people will take you up on that.
Okay.
And we're at almost the 15-minute mark, and we have 2 more questions that I'd like to get in. Jabari, did you have anything that you want to say, Brisport, to follow up on that?
Just echoing the Assemblymember's comments, sometimes the best legislation comes out of conversation like these. So like similar to him, I don't have a specific answer of how we ensure contact with biological siblings. I would love to build something like that with those who are curious about it.
So thank you for sharing about the Kin Gap $1.19 million, the Initiative for Kinship Legal Program, and also that there are statutes, policies, and regulations to consider, and that family engagement is a huge move with the OCFS, and that's why you have the different regional offices to address those questions. The state makes the rules, and then the agencies or the districts have their interpretation. That's what I'm gathering.
And yes, thank you, Hope. And I would just add that, as part of the recent review and engagement as one of the areas that has been identified for improvement, we are actually looking at specific strategies inclusive of the area that you raised, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Nashia B. Nashia, tell us about something about yourself, your impact in relation to the question that you're going to ask.
Yes. Hello, I just want to say good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me and us on this platform. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. So hello, once again, my name is Nashia, and I'm from the New York City region. And I'm here as a lived expert. I'm here as a parent. I'm here as a survivor who has experienced the child welfare system in the context of domestic violence. And I've seen how complicated and painful it can be when survivors are going into CPS involvement. And so although while I know staff receives training on gender-based violence, training itself isn't always enough to ensure that survivors' realities and voices help shape the system's response. So too often power and control dynamics are carried out into court, where the system itself can be weaponized against survivors. Through false and malicious reports or practices that leave survivors punished for the abuse they've endured. The reality raises serious questions about accountability and how OCFS policies impact families experience violence. So with that in mind, I want to ask the panel, what are your thoughts on creating a statewide gender-based violence committee or task force made up of survivors themselves to advise OCFS policies and practices related to CPS, domestic violence, and shelter systems? Also, how would OCFS define accountability in cases where the court system is being or can be used as a weapon against survivors, particularly in false and malicious reporting? So I would like to hear from senators, commissioners, assembly members on how you envision survivor-led input shaping policy, and what commitments are you willing to make toward that, ensuring that survivors are supported, not further harmed by the system.
And excuse me, I'd like to say we have until 1:30, not 1 o'clock. So you have more time. Thank you.
2:30. Oh, okay. Oh.
2:30.
Did I jump in on this? Or, Senator, go ahead, please. Sorry.
Sure. No, I think that's a fantastic idea. I mean, I think, we can always go further in terms of making sure that we are getting input from impacted peoples in a variety of spaces. I know even within our own committee, we did have a task force on universal childcare that recently came up with, well, not recently, it was last year, but reports and suggestions for implementation at the state government. I would want to double check to see if there's anything existing that is doing similar work, but I think including impacted people like yourself in advising and making suggestions for the government is always a very strong idea, and it's great to streamline that and make sure that you have a seat at the table.
Yeah, I can jump in on that as well, and agree with the senator. I think the more survivor input is crucially important. I will tell you, it's a little off topic, but I'm working on a bill for in the court system for the families where the judges give, unfortunately, the child over to abusers. It's called Kira's Law. I could talk to you ad nauseum about it, but I don't want to waste everybody's time here. It's about what happens to domestic violence and child abuse in the court context, which is a way to prevent kids getting into the circumstance of the child welfare system. This is, I think that question's more about OCFS, I think, and the executive. However, I will tell you, I'm open to the idea if it's done in the right way and can be used appropriately to impact legislation. I'm open to it. Okay.
I would just add, we've been in a space of moving work forward. So thinking about, nothing about us without us, and how do we move forward in this space in terms of improving outcomes for families. If families are not at the table and their voices are not centered. So when you propose, Nashia, about a task force that is inclusive of those who have had lived experience as it pertains to informing policies on domestic violence and supporting survivors, it makes sense, right? Because again, we can be well-intentioned in terms of what we think are the answers, but there's something to be said about individuals who have actually experienced the circumstance being able to use their lens to inform policy and inform decision-making.
So what I'm hearing is that it makes sense and there's more work to be done in this area. Does that seem to be the consensus here, everybody? Bridgeport? Gail?
Yes, and then we'll probably put this in the bucket of things I want to work on with this group. Once you start creating committees and task forces, you inevitably run into questions of who and how many and who chooses and who picks, all the fun questions, but happy to work on this.
So since we have Nashia and some other folks who represent domestic violence survivors on this platform, and since you said it here, and right now, you can expect to hear from quite a few people. Thank you for your contributions and sharing all of this information with us, and especially on, the work that you're doing, Hevesi, on this bill about Daniel's Law. You may not have to go into it, but many of the survivors here probably are aware of it. And if they weren't, they'll be looking into it now. So thank you. I just wanted to, now that I know, or that I've been reminded, I have a little bit of nerves, folks. This is my first time doing this for Families Together New York State. Different organization, different set of challenges to address. So we have until 2:30. So I just wanted to just give a little bit space for people to kind of like, if there was something else that you wanted to add, and we do have one more question, and that's Giselle. I want to check because Giselle is a ride or die, someone who's been impacted as a child, a mother, and a grandmother, who's so committed to being here today that she was in transit on our prep call right before we got on. So I just want to make sure that Giselle is still with us. So while I'm doing that, I just wanted to see if there was any other things that you wanted to talk about, because I don't see Giselle here right now. I'm looking for her. She is? Okay.
She just responded.
Okay, so Giselle, I just introduced you briefly, but if you could introduce yourself and share your question, we're waiting for you. Thank you.
I think she signed off and signed back on and is now in the audience. So give me a second. I'm gonna go try to find her.
In the meantime, if people want to look at the stuff in the chat, there are a couple of great comments that Julia Davis put a link in there if people are interested in learning more about the children's rights.
Thanks, Paige. And Giselle's here.
Yes,
And on a couch instead of a subway bench now.
yes, and I want to thank you all for your patience and for allowing me to have this opportunity to have my voice heard. I am a 64-year-old woman who was impacted as a child when it was called BCW. So, I'm going way back, right? And, I understand the cycle of the child welfare system, but that's not why we're here. I'm here to talk about poverty. Poverty is not neglect, and yet the system's response to dealing with a housing issue is met with an investigation, judgment, and separation rather than genuine support. I believe that we need a system that focuses on family preservation and unification. But in my experience, you find that this is not happening. And people are afraid of your cure. So my question is, what is OCFS doing to become part of the solution instead of exasperating the problem? And when will OCFS shift from child removal to a family and policy decisions? And mostly important, what concrete timeline can you provide for family preservation and actually keeping children safe with their families rather than taking them away? Our families deserve a system that relies on our families deserve better than a system that relies on removal. And we need your commitment to real reform that puts family unity and healing at the center of child welfare. So my question is basically more on housing, right? Housing has become an issue when we're talking about the separation of families. So we also wanted to know, how are you going to incorporate policies, right, to keep these children and families together instead of separating them? And what timeline are you going to give us that's going to be concrete and providing the preservation family security?
Well, you know what? Let me jump in on that one. I know Ms. Pratt is thinking, what the hell is he going to say here? But I want to give credit to OCFS, specifically on this line. They have established what's called the HERES line, and I think Ms. Pratt mentioned this earlier, which is a way for when you get cases coming into CPS, for the cases that we know are just poverty, that are not neglect, that would otherwise wind up as a problem with the CPS system, that OCFS has made the proactive policy that they have a line that's open, I think it's 7 days a week, that you can talk to them and call them and get help with issues, including housing, including food and other services. So we try to make the distinction between, no, this is not a family who's acting in the in the adversarial interest to their kid. No, this is just a family that's in poverty. So I just wanted to start by giving OCFS credit for establishing that line, and I know it's been successful, but I will leave the rest to my friend from OCFS.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Assemblymember, for elevating the HERES line. Yes, it is, when we're talking about having alternatives to child welfare involvement, the HERES line is a one approach in regards to providing that alternative pathway when it is not about abuse or neglect. Giselle, thank you for your question. And so what is it that OCFS is doing in this space? So I want to start with our updated mandated reporter training. I made reference to it earlier, but I do think when we're talking about the gateway to involvement with the child welfare system, it starts with, what calls are coming into the state central registry. So in 2023, we launched an updated mandated reporter training. In that training, we really talked about the distinction between poverty and neglect, and that poverty is not neglect. We talked about implicit bias and how that may impact decision making in regards to a call being made to the SCR. We provided a decision making tree as a resource and a framework and a guide to help individuals who may be considering making a call as to whether or not the circumstance rises to the level of that needing to be made to the SCR, or is there another way to be able to address that via the HERES line, as the Assembly member mentioned, as well as also the number of programs and services that we do invest in terms of primary prevention. So again, when this is not about abuse and neglect, and this is about supports, we've made investments in our family opportunity centers. We've made investments in family resource centers, our Healthy Families program, because again, the more that we can be upstream in terms of primary prevention, then hopefully then we are succeeding in narrowing the entryway into the child welfare system. In terms of preservation of families, again, the investment in both prevention, upstream primary prevention, but also in Under Family First in the evidence-based program. So we actually had a state funding evidence-based program with brief strategic family therapies, supporting 3 agencies and districts in terms of implementing an evidence-based program. These are programs that really have been reviewed and have a distinction of being either well supported, or promising by the clearinghouse in regards to being able to supporting families and addressing the concern that has come to the attention of needing some resources, with the goals again of not having a child having to come into foster care. In those circumstances where there is the circumstances rise to the circumstance of there needs to be an intervention of removal, then we are prioritizing kinship. So again, that may not seem to be in the vein of family preservation, but it certainly is about maintaining family connections. In those circumstances, what we try to underscore is that removal of a child from the home is a last resort, not the first response when CPS is going to the door, going to a family's home, and there is a concern that is of an immediate safety factor. How is it that we are engaging with families, and how are we centering families in terms of addressing what the concern may be? I also want to bring up that we have provided trauma-informed training for both district staff as well as for OCFS agency staff. I think one of the, when we're thinking about that contact and involvement with families, how that occurs, the manner in which engagement occurs is important, and the lens in which workers are approaching the work is important, and recognizing that there is trauma is a component, and so the need for workers to have that lens when they are interfacing and having interactions with families. So I'm going to start there just to see if there's anything that you want to ask more specifically, or if there's anything that you have not heard.
Yeah, there is something I would like to ask more specifically. And, like I said, it does deal with housing because, how do you guys, so let's say there's a mother who's had ACS called in because the child has been sent to the hospital numerous times because of asthma related things. And then you find out that it's mold related to the mold and the mildew that's happening. So is there an opportunity where y'all come in and you hold the landlords accountable and things like that to help the parent when they go into court and things like that?
So that's what should be happening because, when we're talking about a condition that is not the cause of the family, to your example, there is mold in the building, or there's lead in the building, that these are circumstances that are really under the responsibility of the landlord. And so when we're talking about if that home is no longer habitable because of those circumstances, that's not abuse or neglect. That's a circumstance of a home that has been deemed inhabitable. And so really the approach should be then, how are we supporting the family in terms of identifying an alternate living arrangement that is not about a child coming into foster care. I know there are circumstances, because I will say prior to coming to OCFS, I was in a local district. I started out at as a frontline staff. So I know that there are times when it happens the way it should, but I also appreciate that there are instances where maybe it is not happening the way it should. And so how do we continue to engage in the training, technical assistance policies that speak to what should be occurring in those circumstances, and that a home that is deemed inhabitable, that is not is not due to anything that the parent has done, is not a grounds for a removal of a child.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Giselle, did you have anything else to that? I want to recognize Ashley, but I also want to kind of uplift some things that we're seeing in the chat that also contribute to add to this conversation. And I would also like Brisport to kind of chime in on the economic conditions in housing regarding state policy more broadly than what OCFS is doing. So,
My question is very quick.
okay.
Ms. Pratt mentioned something about the workers receiving some trauma-informed training. Is this training also available for the family court judges also? Because I know that in a family court setting, things can only go but so far with social workers. At the end of the day, it's still in the judge's hands as far as decision making. Are you able to share this training with the final decision makers in family court?
Let me touch on that one. So the bill that I was speaking about earlier called Kira's Law will address training for the judges, but it is a little bit complicated just because of separation of powers issue. The judges and the courts do not like when the legislature tell them what to train on, but we're fighting back and forth with them over a bunch of different pieces for training, and to be continued. But the answer is yes, we are looking exactly at that issue. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
Assembly Member. And I would just add that we do have some conduits in terms of working with the courts around opportunities for training. So there is what is called Judges School. And so at certain times of the year, judges do actually have a forum in which they are receiving training. And sometimes there is an opportunity for us to be able to provide training in those spaces. We also have our court improvement collaborative, and that is another opportunity for us to be able to work with the courts, and an opportunity to identify trainings that might be of benefit, especially based on areas that come to our attention or there is an ask. And so this is something specifically, Ashley, that I will bring back to our liaisons for the court improvement project to see if this is something that we could actually move forward, with the sort of the mutual agreements with the courts as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Bridgeport?
Yeah, I
Did
was
you
just
want
gonna.
to expand on the economic conditions?
Yes, I did. And I wanted to start, I know Giselle, part of your question was about timeline, about, expansion of services or programs, whether they're supportive services, preventative, or however you want to call it. And I wanted to make a pitch for all of us to be looking at the timeline of the state budget, which is due April 1st every year, really kicks off with the release of the executive budget in January, but it's a real opportunity to look at how we are allocating resources in terms of who is getting the services they need. And it's also an opportunity to examine how much resources we have. And this ties into Amal's question earlier about, the resources going to congregate care when, we could obviously be doing resources into supportive services. I've always been a fan of growing the pie, expanding the state budget through higher taxes on the wealthy. A lot of people don't recognize or know that New York has a pretty massive economy. It's around $2 trillion. It's around the same size as Canada's economy, although Canada has 40 million people and we have 20 million people. So there is a lot, there's the same amount of wealth for about half the number of people, and there's a lot more to be spread around and put into our communities. A lot of the wealth of New York is held by a small group of people, multimillionaires and billionaires, who could afford to pay a lot more in taxes to ensure that families all across the state are doing well. And politically, what we're seeing even at the federal level is that a federal budget was just passed, which essentially defunded Medicaid and SNAP in order to give tax breaks to multimillionaires and billionaires who already have a lot. So by looking in the state budget at not only reversing the tax cuts or offsetting the tax cuts that they've seen at the federal level, but using that money to offset potential cuts to the social safety net, but also expand programming that's direly needed, is a great way to ensure that we are supporting families in such a way that we are helping them before they are victims of a necessary separation or any type of reporting.
So with all of that being the case, knowing about the impact of the federal on the state, and knowing that there's going to be reduction in services and people are doing things to make sure that that doesn't happen to the extent that it could. We have people here with lived experience who are involved in different organizations. What do you say to them in terms of what needs to be done, in terms of how they can impact this change? You have people here representing congregate care, you have domestic violence, you have someone who's dealing with this from an intergenerational perspective. What do you say to them? Because that's what they're here for.
Yeah, I'll hop back in to say, one, you're advocating in this space with us, but also to your own representatives at the state level. Ask them what is their plan on tax policy and the social safety net in the upcoming state budget. If we don't change anything, then the cuts at the federal level will cause a reduction in the social safety net, especially our hospitals. And I think it would be malpractice to let New York's wealthiest get off the hook with the tax cuts they just got at the expense of people on Medicaid and SNAP. I think it's imperative that we raise taxes on the wealthy in order to offset the cuts and also expand the social safety net.
I could jump in. I'm sorry. I felt like I was kind of hiding behind the senator for that one. But the answer is, I totally agree with the senator. I believe that we needed to raise taxes a couple of years ago because if you remember, we came off of the Cuomo administration for 12 years where they wouldn't raise a tax for anybody. And so everybody, particularly in the child welfare space, was held flat with no cost of living adjustments. But now you add to that fact that you have a president who hates Americans, who's coming in to take 300,000 people off of SNAP benefits. That's kids, that's veterans, that's everybody. Then 1.5 million people are going to get knocked off of their health insurance. And for us in the state, that manifests in a $10 billion deficit this year and a $34 billion deficit in the next couple of years. So we're going to do everything we can to try to close that gap. But you got to remember, we are the state. We are not able to come up with money the way the federal government does. So we're going to do our best to be responsible. I think that looks like we go after filling in the SNAP first because it's the smallest amount of money. But then there's going to be people who are not going to be able to make whole. But we're just going to do everything we can to keep fighting for people who are having difficult circumstances, understanding the fact that the federal government right now is not our ally. They are just not our friends on any front. They're doing everything they can to make life more difficult for New Yorkers and Americans. And we'll just do the best we can to ride this out and then get on to a better administration soon, I hope.
Thank you. That was a question that's on a lot of people's minds that I hear all the time in the different spaces that we're in. So I just wanted to kind of like let you know what people are thinking, what I'm hearing in different spaces, and what I've heard from a lot of the different people some people who are on this line. So I just wanted to mention that. And Giselle, you had one final question. We at the 2:12 mark.
Yes, I have. My final question is, a lot of us who are on this call, we're on organizations, right? That deal with people who are going through trauma things. But what I'm trying to figure out is, I would love to see the state work with a lot of the organizations that are boots on the ground already, right? And how do we get the organization, the big one, which is OCFS, to come in and listen to what we're saying that is going on in our communities, because our impacted communities, they were struggling before Trump got into office. And so I wanted to know how can we all work together? You know what I'm saying? And how can the state actually fund organizations that's really doing the work on the ground? I mean, we're out here every day. We're giving resources and food and clothing and shelter to people that are being harmed by a system that continues to well, I guess it's because you guys said that I don't know why, but I just feel like we should be talking a lot more to the people that are boots on the ground doing this work.
So Giselle, in the chat.
Can I jump in and answer that one? Because I actually have a really good answer. Sorry. Yeah, Giselle, I have a really good answer to that one. There's a bill that is, I know it all sounds like there's just bills, but there's a bill that we have called, that creates the Child and Family Wellbeing Fund. And that is a $50 million fund that will drive money directly into communities with high child welfare involvement. So we are looking to get that done in this upcoming session. Hope that's helpful.
That was very helpful.
That information is in the chat. That link is in the chat. That's what I was going to direct you to.
I would just add that there are allocations that OCFS does make directly in terms of funding community-based organization under the William Hoyt Trust Fund. and can send information, Giselle, into the group in regards to what are those timeframes for the funding. There are we do have procurement criteria as it pertains to the allocations of funding, but happy to follow up and share more information in regards to what are the various funding that we do allocate directly to providers and opportunities there. I would also say that in addition, we allocate under what is known as the open-ended 6238 funding. There is funding that's allocated to the districts, and districts are able to also contract directly with providers in the community when it comes to building their network of programs and services. So there are, just wanted to sort of identify that there is a direct sort of funding allocation that the state does, but then also through our allocations to the districts, there is also opportunities there. I believe you are in New York City, and so, can also provide information about what might be some of the funding opportunities to access within the New York City region as well.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Gail. I'm sure
Thank
that's
you,
news
Gail.
to people on this call. Brad?
I have to acknowledge Assemblymember Hevesi's face, Gail, when you said 62 30, whatever it is, because it used to be 65-35. And he had a bill that said 75-25.
Thank
That
you.
wasn't your
I was
fault,
trying to
Gail.
restrain myself. Thank you, Brad.
And that should be changed. I want to lift up Amal. I see your hand up.
Yes. Just a quick point, and to clear up any confusion that needs to be addressed earlier. We're not simply trying to get rid of congregate placements. We're not as naive to assume that it can be done overnight. We are very well understanding that this thing takes work and it takes time, just like as many of the beautiful bills that you have discussed with us today. But the whole point is to get the wheel moving so that the work can be done, not to simply be afraid that because it is such a long struggle that we shouldn't do it. And to also address some of your bills, yes, they're wonderful, they are beautiful, but the sad, unfortunate truth is that they're not very well informed and not everybody knows about them. And those who don't know about them aren't quote unquote qualified to receive the funding in which your bills provide. So just wanted to address that.
Okay. Hey, Amal, I want to apologize if I gave the impression that I wasn't looking to do this as fast as possible. I just wanted to caution against a history that I just don't want to see repeated here. But I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Oh, we're not trying to do it fast though. Just we understand it takes time. We understand
trying to
this.
do it right.
This is a motion. Yeah.
Yep, I'm with you.
But to start it though, we just want
Yes.
to start it.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Amal. So I just want to kind of uplift some of the things that are coming up in the chat. Just in relation to everything that people said, there's concern about making sure that with those organizations that are boots to the ground, people with lived experience are being heard, that there's a multi-pronged solution for these things that impact young people and families with lived experience. They're allies who've come up with some ideas on how to address these problems, these challenges that we have. And the big question that everyone has is how are the federal programs going to affect us and people are being impacted? We're glad to hear that there's an agreement regarding congregate care, that yes, there are people who still need it, but there are some things that are being done, that there's a move towards making sure that there's more kinship care is pretty much the focus. We're happy to hear about the regional offices and people being involved. It's good to know that you understand that poverty is not neglect and that you've updated your mandated reporter training and that there's family FOCs and FRCs, and that you understand that wealth is held by a small group, and that there's people here that are really interested in making sure that things are moving incrementally. just little by little, but there are people who really want to make sure that things are moving faster because people are impacted each and every day, and this is their lives. And I'm going to get off my platform and pass it on to Paige, but I just want to recap some of the things that were discussed. And thank you all for being here. And Paige, I hand the mic over to you. This was a first for me. Thank you for your patience with me, guys.
Oh,
Well-
I'm sorry, Paige. I just
Go ahead.
wanted to say just one more thing. Hope, you did fabulous moderating this. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I just wanted to lift up, as you were doing the recap about persons with lived experience really being centered in this work. And so, with Families Together, with Paige and Hope, we actually do have family policy advisors that are here at OCFS for just that purpose in terms of being centered in policy and identifying programs and services. In addition, we have the Parent Advisory Board and we have the Youth Advisory Board. And I will make a plug that we have some openings on our Parent Advisory Board. And so, to the question of how to be able to hear from persons, in particular persons with lived experience, to inform policy and programs and services, I would just put that on the table as well, that we actually do have our Parent Advisory Board and we have vacancies.
Thank you so much, Gail. And Senator Brisport and Assemblymember Hevesi, do either of you have anything that you want to say at the end?
Yeah, just that this was a fantastic opportunity to be in continued partnership. Some of you who I've known from work in the past, some of you who I'm meeting for today. Would definitely love to learn more about any places where our legislation our current legislation has come short. Just responding to Amal's comment earlier, it's never intention to leave anyone out. So yeah, would love to chat more about areas or places where you feel people would not qualify for certain programs, because that's definitely not the intention. And yes, looking forward to continued partnership. And like I said, if good legislation comes out of this conversation and continued conversations, it's a big plus in my book. And great job, Hope, on the moderating.
Thank you.
Assemblyman, you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, sorry, my internet is going in and out, so I apologize. I just want to say thank you, Hope. Hope, you were awesome. You did great, as you always do. So I do appreciate it. And as for everybody else, I always learn from these conversations. I like them because they always keep us held accountable to where we need to be. I know there's some good follow-up we could do after this call, some great work coming up. But I just want to say thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this group to have these very serious discussions. So thank you, Paige. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Senator. And thank you, Hope, and everybody else and all the ambassadors here. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say to everyone watching that the fact that these three folks are here who have, very, very busy schedules, they recognize the importance of hearing from families and young people. And as Gail just said, OCFS is investing in that with both the advisory board and with the family policy advisors. And we know that the senator and the assembly member always take our calls, and they really do listen to us. And I want for those who are out there listening to this today and watching this to know that you do have three friends right here in Albany in these three folks, but also that Families Together is working closely with them to bring these comments that you're putting in the chat and all the other feedback that you've given us over the years continues to go into the ears of these people and to other people that they work with. And it's important to continue to have your voice shared, and the work is being changed because of your voices. And I really appreciate that. I want to say also thank you to the staff, Brad and Hope and Kadisha, who have been the reason that today has been successful. Just really great work. Brad, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, thanks, Paige. I appreciate that. And I do want, I want to say two things. One, hell yeah, let's build power together. Let's fight. there is a fight on our hands, and it needs everyone in this room activated and figuring out ways to plug in to these movements. And we are Families Together is just one of those ways. But you can see already, like these conversations you're going to have influence people that have decision-making power and authority in the state. And we all have a lot more power than you realize. And there's certain people who don't want you to realize that, but we want you to realize that. And I now want to pass it to Khadijah, who, first of all, is our new youth public policy coordinator. She's already formed a rivalry with the former youth policy coordinator, Zach Kilmer. Just kidding. Check out our TikTok. Khadijah, I just want you to, do some promos. You've been working really hard on all these town halls and events coming up.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Yeah, my name is Khadijah Abdulaziz. I recently joined Families Together as the youth policy coordinator, and I'm really glad that this town hall went well. It was our first one of the year, but we have 3 more coming up, and our next one will be on Monday, September 15th. So I hope everybody that's in attendance today is willing to join that one as well. I'll drop the link in the chat to check out the rest of our schedule for the month. And then we also have our Family Empowerment Day coming up on March 3rd, 2026. So that's an important date. I hope you guys can all attend that as well. And if you want any more information, there's information for all of that on our website.
Thanks, Kanisha, and thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening and answering questions. Thanks for bringing questions, and thanks for everyone in the chat who contributed as well. We look forward to seeing you on Monday for the Developmental Disabilities Town Hall. And then, as Kadisha said, you can look at our website for the rest of the schedule for the town halls. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.